Welcome to this video quantum conversation. We are definitely going in the quantum realm with my guest today, who has been researching and creating new Earth products that are actually Tensor Rings. So let's welcome back Brian Besco to Quantum Conversations. Brian, welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you, Loren. Yes, it's good to be back with you again.
Yes, that first video we did in Boulder, Colorado, that was really fun. Actually, the first video we did was at Contact in the Desert. And now, you know, look, we're wearing sweaters and we've got colder temperatures than when we were in the desert. But a lot has changed for you, and your business has evolved in tremendous ways. And we're going to talk all about that. Before we get there to those updates, let's first talk about your work with Tensor Fields. You work with Tensor Rings, and this is an ancient technology really being revived on our planet.
That's correct. Now, the Tensor Rings, they create that tensor field, and it's the fields that we are working with. So the tensor rings in general, where they create these fields, is based on sacred measures that create these rings that create those fields out of copper. We've learned that they're more about the consciousness. So as our consciousness grows and expands, so does our understanding with these different fields. And so we've learned to construct these tensor rings out of the physical, but the true power and potency of the tensor rings lies within the tensor fields. So the tensor fields is where we create the etheric aspect of the tool, and then that is anchored into the physical through these sacred measurements. So again, as we're expanding and growing, we're able to create more on this higher dimensional plane, which then gets anchored here into the physical. So basically, it's just a way for people to have an easier access to that higher consciousness realm without having to do as much work. We're just trying to make things simple and easy for everybody to access.
Really, truly, you are working with our multidimensionality, right? We are multidimensional, and the products that you work is really connecting us to our higher self.
That's correct. So, you know, when you go to any energy healer, they're not working here on the physical, they're working on all the other bodies, whether that is on a soul level, past life stuff, or the emotional body, which is closer here to the physical. So we as a human are very wide spectrum, from the human to the soul and beyond. And that's the way our tools are working as well, is that we have the rings, which are the physical manifestation, and they exist through all those dimensional planes as well. And so that's where they're doing all that work, is on all of our other bodies, whether it is clear in the emotional body, which most people see cancer beginning in that emotional field, and then it manifests into the physical. These tools will help to clear the emotional field, but they go even farther. And again, as we learn to grow and expand with the consciousness work that we do, we're able to put that into those tools. So when we met at Contact in the Desert, we were just beginning to work with our soul aspects. And we were working with those contracts that we create as we come here in this human form for all of our lessons and learning, basically the expansion of knowledge of our soul, of creation. And so we've just keep taking that to more and more levels and layers. And so that is peeling away those veils. It's allowing us to clear that connection to that higher self and beyond. Because we see us here on this earth as very much on this leading edge of the expansion of creation. And so the work that we do and we anchor in here as a human on this earth is huge. It is so huge. So we're just we're out there with everybody else who are on that leading edge of the expansion and creation. And we're just helping to bring everybody along. Everybody's doing their part. We're doing it through the Tensor Rings.
Beautiful work. Thank you so much for being steadfast in this and just going for it and keeping your vision on it. So we're going to talk about the new products that you've got. And I love these because they really do assist us. They're spiritual tools, really. And we'll go over those, and you can share some experiences that people have had with them. But when you're saying that, all right, Tensor Fields, before we go on, let's talk a little bit then on the geometries of the copper wiring that you work with, the qubits, and how you're really moving the energy, putting the energy into motion through sacred geometry.
Perfect. So the Tensor Rings, and this is one of our rings here. This is a Wi-Fi ring. It's only about 2 inches. Now, a copper wire is actually a crystalline structure. It contains a piezoelectric flow of energy, a one-way flow. We fold that wire in half, we twist it, and then we cut it to within 100 thousandths of a millimeter to these sacred measurements. Traditionally, when Slim Sperling reintroduced this technology into the world in the early 90s, him and some other folks he worked with, they were working with cubit measures that came from the Great Pyramids. And since then, we've expanded on the different cubit measures that we use. They're all sacred measurements. Now, the current cubit measures that we're using, we're calling the golden fire, just for a lack of a name for this cubit measure, because it's never been on the planet before. It's never been used for the geomancy or the construction of any megalithic structures. Now, these specific measures, my sister, Brenda Schnoes, who she used to channel the Elders 3, now she channels her higher soul self. And what she brings through is really assisted in expanding these rings. Her and I work together very much on the creation of the energetic tools that are anchored into the physical. But her and I were looking for a new measurement, and we were shown a geometry that has just began to come onto the planet, and we were shown a specific measure. So we took that measure, and that's the cubit that we're using, the golden fire, for all the rings that we're making now. Now, when the rings are constructed, the ends, after they're cut to that measure, the ends are brought back so that they're creating a flow all the way around the ring in both directions. So it's creating a counter-rotating vortex. Now, that is the tensor field. So the tensor fields that these create, and they're columns of energy that go for miles out both sides, it's the fields that are able to hold the space for everything else that comes in. The reason that we call these the golden fire is because that is related to that trifold golden flame heart that you always see Jesus and Mary depicted with. We're able to reactivate that through an attunement, and we put that into the energetics of these golden fire rings. So within the field of energy, we see that golden fire. But there's a lot of other things that come through here, like the field of universal peace, universal light, and also because these are based on all of our old tools, they still bring through the frequencies and properties of all the plant, crystal, and mineral kingdoms of the world, as well as the earth elementals like water, fire. So also with the Wi-Fi ring, it brings through the consciousness of electricity. And so any of these rings that you would place on like your fuse panel, or people are also placing these on those great big green transformer boxes. And we work with dowsers who are able to determine on a scale the positive or negative benefits of electricity, let's say. So a dowser can go out and find that one of those big green boxes, the transformers in your neighborhood, emits in the negative thousands. They can put one of these rings on it, And because it is working with the consciousness of electricity, the consciousness of the earth elementals and of Gaia and of copper, this will follow that electrical current throughout that entire neighborhood. And they're able to then dowse to find that every one of those meter boxes connected to that transformer moves into the positive hundreds instead of the negative thousands. So our work is really expanded because just a standard tensor field without anything put in the field, it's just a tensor ring, cannot do that. But it is the quality of energy that is put within the field that does all the work. These are just the space holders. And all of our tools that we create here on that higher dimensional plane, that's all guided, guarded, protected. It works with the higher soul self. Because that kind of goes back what you had mentioned, Lorraine, about these working with the soul, is that we do see that these produce so many different possibilities of frequencies within them that if they were just a frequency emitter, we could, it would be so much for us to handle. But the soul then becomes the filter for everything that comes through the field. And the soul is what ensures that these are helpful and beneficial, what particular frequencies come through for you at any given moment. And like we had mentioned on our last video with you about how these cannot be weaponized because it is only what is in the greatest good that comes through. The military looked at them and could not project negative thought forms, things like that, through the fields. So the tensor fields are innately a beneficial field.
I think that's so cool. You are really working with the consciousness of everything. We know that everything is consciousness, and it's beautiful that nothing negative can go through, because that would be a question that I know some people would have. So that is beautiful. It's like it would keep out lower vibrational density, lower density vibrations, negative thought forms, things like this, right?
Yes, and that's what like our tensor field generators are doing in the Golden Fire. Is basically this is just a geometry of the 4 rings. So instead of a single ring creating a column of energy, these ones are creating more of a sunshine effect. And this has a sphere of influence of a half a mile. So within that half-mile radius, it is doing everything that the Golden Fire is doing, is that it is working on a soul level for everybody within this sphere of influence. So everybody within this half mile, it changes everything. It plants that seed for the sacred heart, for the quantum mind, for that field of universal peace to come in. So on a soul level, it is planting the seeds, and not just for the human aspect. And that's the reason that these are working on lower vibration energies and dense consciousness. That lower vibration consciousness, this is finding their soul spark within the heart, and it is connecting them, cleaning and clearing and connecting them to their higher soul self. And when you go up against some of the biggest, baddest entities in the universe, and you see them for their soul spark, their heart, and you watch as that, you just visualize that connection from their heart to their higher soul self, it clears everything. They drop agendas and walk away. For years, we used to work with these beings who appeared to be malicious to humans. And so instead of, trying to treat them as an enemy, so to speak, we would treat them as divinity. And so you go right to the heart, you expand that heart, you connect it to their soul, and then they drop their agendas and walk away. So that's what we're doing with the entities. I mean, we've seen these Golden Fire generators put downtown LA in some of the lowest vibration parks there, and it expands out and it clears entities. Not only those that are walking around, but those that are attached. And then it's just clearing all that lower vibration energy, including portal vortexes, including waterways. These tools are just so profound anymore.
Wow. Really very cool. Okay. Wow. So how would people, I know that there's a whole bunch of healers that would love to incorporate these tools into their work. And one of the things that you said is as it works with consciousness, you also have an intention behind it. I know that's powerful too, as intention, even with sound, and sound healing is a huge factor. It is a major key in the benefits from it. So, talk a little bit about the ways that people can use these then, particularly healers.
Oh, certainly. You know, like the large rings that we had on your show last time, that, you know, they're like 29-inch rings. Those that create that large column of energy, when you're a practitioner and you put those rings like under your table or under your chair, it does half the work for you already, because it drops people automatically into their heart space when they're within that field. And it does that connecting, and it does all that clearing work. So, and then plus the physical body also responds to that. I mean, so it's aligning chakras and energy bodies and clearing energy bodies. So it, like I say, where it lines everything up and does the clearing work, then whatever modality that you're using, it just, it takes better. It's just easier for you to do the work. So, and you don't need the large rings either. And those, like I say, they're for practitioners, but, you know, anybody can use them, because these tools are very intuitive. But just having the generators in your field, or else having an item on you personally, like a pendant, is going to be huge, especially for empaths. We have a pendant here. This is a coil. Now, the golden fire coil that has that infinity on the bottom, the coil itself produces a tube torus, that toroidal field. And then the infinity connects right into the heart, as the heart produces a tube torus as well, an electromagnetic field. So it brings these two energy flows together, and then that brings your light through the heart with this particular coil, and it creates that tube torus around your body about 12 feet across with your light and this energy. And so for practitioners who are usually empaths, where they can feel other people's things, I simply call this tool an empath filter, because it is still allowing all that information to come through, but it clears it. So you don't have to take any of that on. So for practitioners too, that is a big deal as well, to be able to keep themselves clear. So there's so many different ways to use the tools, and like I say, we try not to give the instruction booklets with them, and we try to make them more intuitive, because they truly are. As you hold on to this, it seems that the bigger you also holds on to this, and it drops you into the heart space where we connect to our higher selves. And even people who don't feel energy or don't feel that they're intuitive can use these tools very well.
Okay, I think that's really cool. We're going to go over those. What a really good one for the empaths. That's really good. I know that we can all feel it. And so when you've worn it yourself, and maybe when you've heard of others going out into the field, do they notice a big difference with it then? I mean, this is almost like scalar energy. The copper is holding a space, as you mentioned earlier, for higher dimensional frequencies to come in, and it blends with our energy field. So then if we're doing that to protect ourselves from other people's energy, because many of us are empaths, that would be wonderful, because it really is like a scalar energy. It's fortifying or increasing our energy field.
Yes, and to go back to your last question about intentions, and that's a beautiful thing about these tools, is that anybody could, if you picked one up of these off the street and you just picked it up, it's going to do the work for you, no matter if you have the belief system in it or not. And this works for everybody within their field. But as we are such powerful beings, when we add our intentions to these tools, it just expands it so much. And so these just also allow us to step into that higher expanded state of becoming creators, because we truly are powerful creators, especially from the aspect of fear. And so when we're able to get back into that heart space and our field is clear and the veils are thinned, then we can actually step into, becoming more of those creators that we truly are and creating from the heart space. And again, one of the products that we're offering in our special is the universal light activations, which will help you step more into that fully and to becoming that creator. So the tools are great. They're kind of like training wheels for us. They help us understand what we can do. They're kind of like mirroring for us and showing us that these things are possible and we can do it with our own consciousness. And again, what these tools are doing is only possible because we're doing it with consciousness first. So it's just really exciting to be able to see people pick these up and just run with them.
Yes, I'm certain you've got stories of people, because they're connected to their higher self, that they're bringing through information and inspiration more. And this is really, truly why I call this a new earth business. These are new earth tools. Again, because it does bring us into the heart and it clears out all the other junk and the dross that we don't really need anymore. So that is really beautiful. Okay, let's talk a little bit more on some specifics on some of your additional products, because these are powerful. We've talked on this show before about the silent epidemic of EMF fields. And when you see these large Wi-Fi towers in our neighborhoods, cell towers, and what are they up to? 5G now and growing. So this is actually giving us a command over our own energy fields. And I love that you've got the golden fire generator, the orb-like unit that works for a half a mile. That's really cool. I think we should be planting these in schools and around our neighborhoods.
Yes. Yeah, I send a little 2-inch one of these to school with my little girl every day. It's in her backpack.
Good.
So as far as some of the other tools, we have the cell phone tabs that go directly on your cell phone. Now, since we talked too, we've had some biofeedback studies done out on the East Coast of these little tabs that stick onto your phone. And cool. These 1-inch discs, they're showing that they are aligning energy bodies and chakras and making organs function better. So the biofeedback shows exactly what it was that we were being shown as well, is that it repurposes the energy. So that is huge, because you talk about cell phone towers and all the energy they produce, or like we were talking about earlier with those green boxes, those transformers that produce so much energy. So instead of trying to block any of this energy, we're going to repurpose it. Kind of like how in consciousness work, we see dense, dark energy as nothing more than condensed light. And when you bring your divine awareness to that condensed light, it expands. So kind of the same concept that we're doing with any energy, whether it is dark, dense consciousness energy, or whether it is electromagnetics or geopathic, or the geomagnetics, we are repurposing that to be beneficial. So that's what our cell phone tabs do. That's what the Wi-Fi rings do that you put on your Wi-Fi. We're also working with the visible light spectrum, like our little Wi-Fi rings. These fit perfectly over your 2-inch fluorescent bulbs, and they change the quality of the visible light spectrum as well. And then for electrical and the water, so you see a lot of our municipal water tanks as having all these cell phone tower and communication devices attached to them. So many municipalities are renting out your water towers for that. So to empower people, we teach people to take this little 2-inch Wi-Fi ring and slip it over their water faucet, and then go with an intention of sending the energy of this Wi-Fi ring back up through the water to your municipal water tank and clearing all the energy and information from there. So with your intention, heart-spaced, it is just like taking a giant ring and slipping right over your municipal water tank with those cell phone towers. So again, just coupling with those intentions. And, you know, and with the water too, and I was just going to jump right into water, Loren.
Mm-hmm.
We make a water ring. Now there's the gals that Dances with Water, the New Science of Water. They wrote a book several years ago. They're the ones who have helped me with the Tensor Rings all this way ever since I first started getting the messages from Slim Sperling after he passed. So these two gals, scientists, when they wrote their first edition, phenomenal book, they just came out with a second edition not too long ago, and I'm actually, us at Twisted Sage are actually in that second edition of that book. It shows that the tensor fields are making water lighter in weight in the lab. It brings it to its original crystalline structure, and it balances out the pH. And the reason that makes it lighter in weight in the lab is it's creating that ormus, kind of like you hear of white powdered gold and how they can set it on a scale. And as it jumps between the quantum and the physical, it becomes lighter. And that's what it's doing with the water. It is making it more quantum. And so we do make those rings, the earth resonance rings for Dances with Water. But since we just discovered these golden fire rings, now the golden fire is because of the tensor fields. The tensor fields themselves are doing fantastic things. But then we also bring in that consciousness of water, of all the plant crystal mineral kingdoms, all the rays of light, and all the other earth elementals. And so all of that is available within these rings. So these rings, since they work so well on the physical aspect of water, as well as the spiritual and energetic, it acts kind of like a communication device to your water. So you could actually just speak through the ring and speak to your water, asking it to carry specific frequencies and vibrations for you of like bergamot or some other certain herb. Or you can just ask it to create you a healing elixir, slip the ring around your glass. Within seconds, it clears the energetics of water. We're seeing these golden fire rings as bringing water back to its original blueprint before it came in to the earth. So these golden fire rings, then when you slip it over your glass, then you let it sit overnight, then it has a chance to work also on the physical aspect. So with water, it is just so phenomenal on what it's doing with water. I mean, you can taste and feel the difference. And we see water as being a way that you can use it as something to heal with, as, you know, because water will carry all that energy and information for you from the rings.
Yes, that's beautiful. You really are advancing on off of Emoto's work, where what we've learned from how water does behave, and he even claimed water is God. Simply enough, he said water is God. And so what you're doing with these tensor fields is beautiful. It really is. And so takes charging water to a whole new level. We do understand that we can charge water. I did this with my dog for years, so this is beautiful. We could even just use a word, perfect health, vibrant health. Maybe even you said taking the ring and putting it over the glass or your glass in the ring. What about like a larger 5-gallon jug of water? Could you put it on, so say if you get bottled water, you know, in a 5-gallon jug, or even on your water filter, those would work too as well, right?
Yes, you know, you can put this around, you know, water that passes through it, and it'll clear the memory from it. But to take to do the physical restructuring, it just takes a little bit more time. So that's why it's best to use these on containers of water. Now, this tensor field will go through any container. I mean, the tensor fields go down deep into the earth and through walls, everything. So you can place this just on top of a 5-gallon container or even a 20-gallon container, because as it begins to work with the water is quantum. So again, within that entire container, it is doing the restructuring of the water, because it doesn't have to be just within this physical column. So another fun thing to do with the rings, especially when working with water, is you can place this on top of your container or underneath, but if you place it on top, you can also place crystals or any other type of energy device within this ring. And so it creates that column of energy, because the consciousness of the crystals and the frequencies and properties of the crystals love tensor rings. They will be able to use that carrier wave that the ring creates, and it will be able to send that into the water. We even have like larger 15-inch golden fire rings that we put on top of our refrigerators, and we put all of our supplements in there. And then it is taking the frequencies and properties of the supplements, and it is sending it down into all the food and beverages within your refrigerator as well. So it just blends everything together. And an interesting thing with Dr. Emoto and the GDV photo imaging, we have a friend who does GDV photo imaging. He's actually the one who brought it here into the United States. He tested some coconut oil for a friend in Costa Rica who used our rings in their manufacturing process with coconut oil. And on the GDV photo imaging, it took it off the charts to where it wasn't even recognized. And he's only seen that a couple times before, and that was with Dr. Emoto's personally charged water, where it takes the frequency and vibration off the scales. So using the tensor rings with your water, with the oils, with supplements, everything, it just clears and then raises the frequency and vibration of everything within that field.
Raising the vibration of the planet. That's what these products are doing. So beautiful, really quite spectacular. And just imagine when more testing gets done, more scientific labs get done, more photography with these methods get taken, it will just validate your work. So keep going. That is so awesome. And it really is good. And I know you've got testimonials from people all over who use these rings. And the science is proving the quantumness of what's going on here. And I think that's beautiful. So you really are right spot on. Okay, cool. Let's talk about, you talked about the cell phone tab. So that's really cool. And really what we're doing is harmonizing these energies. We're repurposing these energies. So let's see, did we get to it all? I'd like you to talk a little bit more. I mean, when we're talking about water, it's also making us alkaline as well. It's structuring the water.
Yes, and since we are mostly water, when you are within these tensor fields, it is working on the water within your body. Because they will take acidic water and they'll change it to a neutral pH. And of course, when we wear these tools on the body, or we sleep within the big rings, or having the generators around, it is working with that water within the body. So, using the rings to drink the water, you are able to have a better cell hydration too. So that will help to hydrate the body as well. So yeah, we do have the water rings, and we spoke on the cell phone tabs, and also the tensor field generators. And then I also spoke a little bit about the Wi-Fi ring and how you can use that for light bulbs or for your electrical within the water, or else you can just place it right on your Wi-Fi antenna. We also talked about the coil, the Empath Filter. The only other product that I wanted to show was the 2-inch Golden Fire disc. Now, these have a peelable back sticker on them, and they're weatherproof. So you could actually take these out and put them onto those electrical transformer panels. These are the ones that people are using on those. We designed these actually to either place on your smart meter or else on your fuse panel. Because for years there was so much concern about when the smart meters first came out. But just your meter, your analog meter in general, you don't want to spend too much time within 5 to 6 feet of that, because of that electromagnetic field is detrimental. It produces that 60 hertz, which interferes with the oscillation of the human heart as an electromagnetic generator. So again, when we use these tools, it is restructuring that energy to be healthful and beneficial. So that 2-inch Golden Fire disc, you can put it right onto your fuse panel or your breaker box, and it will follow that electrical back to your smart meter. And so then it will transmute or transform all the energy that comes out of there, whether it's the Wi-Fi signal that goes to the electrical company, and it will also carry back up the current, the electrical, to your neighbor's house. It's hard to say exactly how far back upstream it goes, but we've seen it going into an apartment building. If you live in an apartment, you put it on your breaker box, and it covers your entire apartment. And so not only is it restructuring all that electromagnetics, it's also bringing through those frequencies of unconditional love, of the golden fire, of universal peace. And so it is changing the entire quality of your living space. And it's basically creating a sacred space through using the electrical wiring of your home.
Isn't that beautiful? You know, instead of fighting or resisting or blocking this energy, we are cleaning it, repurposing it, bringing it back into alignment using the electricity that's already there. That really is very, very cool. And I know people will want to use this in multiple places, but we've got a package. You've got a special offer of a variety of tools, or all these tools that we've talked about. People can buy them individually. I know some are going to want to buy like a few of those discs, right? And maybe just like put it at your relative's house or friends and family or things like that. But let's go over that because it's a nice little package, and you did talk about everything, but we'll just recap it here. It's got literally one of everything.
Sure. Yeah, so for the environmental, it has that golden fire generator, which is going to have that half-mile sphere of influence. It's going to do the clearing of not only the EMF and the geopathic, but it is also working with that denser consciousness, portal vortexes, all of that. And then we have the Wi-Fi ring, which you can use on your Wi-Fi router, but really if you have the generator, it's kind of redundant to put it onto the Wi-Fi router. You can put this onto computers or other frequency emitting devices, onto your water faucet, or carry it in your pocket. A lot of people even use them as pendants if you wish. Then we have the Golden Fire disc, which is one that you can place onto the breaker box. Now, I actually use the disc on my cell phone too. You don't need to. You can actually just use the standard cell phone tab on your cell phone or your computer or laptop or iPad. So anywhere that you have a frequency emitting device, you can put the disc or the Wi-Fi ring or the cell phone tab. And then we have, for the water, we have our water ring. And again, they're all the golden fire tools, so you don't have to limit them to just water or just electromagnetics or just your person. You can use these in all ways. They are universal tools. So the one that we have for the water is this guy here, that 3 3/4 inch water ring. And then we also have that coil, the golden fire coil, this toroidal field coil. And that one is for your own personal, and all those within your field, because as we begin to have our light that expands out from the heart, and we become activated with that sacred flame, that trifold golden flame of the heart, everybody within our field picks that up too. So even though you may have a generator that is planting those seeds on a soul level to everybody in your neighborhood, wherever you go, you are planting those seeds to everybody within your field. And then so the seventh item in this package, besides the 6 physical items, is going to be that universal light activations. When you sign up for that universal light activation, it's actually just a recording. But when you make that purchase, I go soul to soul with you to help make sure, because I do the distance work, to help make sure that all the clearing work takes place. My sister Brenda and I both hold space as you actually listen to the audio in real time. We are there holding space with you. And that audio is that activation of that sacred heart, of the quantum mind, and of bringing in that field of universal peace. And again, that in itself is some of the most powerful consciousness work that we are aware of on the planet right now. And the reason that ties in with this package is because all of that is part of these tools. But you can go through that meditation, which is just a 13-minute guided meditation, and that'll teach you how to get into that heart space and clear all those cords and contracts, including getting into that basement of the heart, where we are clearing all those cords and contracts, oaths, vows, promises that kept us into that old world matrix. And then this universal light activation is also us as a collective stepping up and beyond all the old matrix systems, all the old, the different grid systems on the earth that had been hijacked at one time. Basically, this allows us to step up and create a whole new grid system where we as the human are the physical anchor, and we connect with that sacred heart and with our souls, and we're connecting this universal light matrix that we are becoming creators from, with that field of universal peace and with that trifold golden flame heart and of that soul connection. So this really is huge work, and you add all of those together, and it truly is a transformational package, all this stuff together. I really look forward to working with each and every one of you who do go through to purchase that universal light activation, or if you purchase the package, you get that with it, because it changes everything. It really, truly does.
Absolutely. These are incredible tools for higher consciousness. So when we talk about expanding our consciousness, these tools assist us in aligning to those energies that are already present and repurposing lower density energies. Really, really, really incredible work. Thank you so much, Brian. I want to go back and chat with you real quick. You mentioned Slim Sperling, and he did a lot of the work on qubits and this mathematical research. And this is even on our sacred sites on our planet. So that's what's really cool about it. But you mentioned that you communicated with him after his passing. Share that story for us. That's
Certainly. So, it's interesting. I'm here from South Dakota, and Slim Sperling was also from South Dakota. He was a self-taught geodowser. He would use dowsing rods to go find geomagnetic lines. Before I heard about Slim, I got interested in the geomagnetic lines myself. And so I started to use dowsing rods to find those geomagnetic lines. And that's how I got into doing the work for clearing all the sacred sites. Well, clearing a lot of the grids, like the church grid, there's a lot of grids, the capital grids, the stadiums, all that stuff, is because as you find these geomagnetic lines and you see where they're connecting at, and they connect at like obelisks, and that just diverts the energy. So basically they were the old grid system. So Slim is doing that same thing, and that is what spurred him on to create the tensor rings in the first place, was that they were using these cubit measures that came from the Great Pyramids, and they found that if you laid them on the ground or stapled them into the ground, that it would cause some of those non-beneficial geomagnetic lines to bounce up over your space. And so once I started to begin to try to make these tools, because that information just was not out there, Slim passed away in 2007. And so it was 2010 that I started to play around and make these tools, 2009 and 10. And as I started to make these tools, and actually it started back before that with my sister, and she channeled in Hetica, the water elemental symbol. I have a Hetica right here. And that symbol inside of there, the Triskelion, is that Hetica elemental. And when she channeled that in, I was getting that out into the world. And then the gals at Dances with Water contacted me, and they said, well, you know, all the channeled information that you guys are bringing through backs the science that we have with what they call the Triskelion. And they called me up a couple weeks later and said, well, you know, we're scientists, but yet Slim sits on our front porch every night when we come home from work, and he has messages for you on how to put together these tools. And at the time, I was still fairly mundane. You know, I had more of a scientific background. And so I was getting the messages on how to put together the tools. And as that progressed, Slim worked with a lot of clairvoyants and even scientists. And so I worked with a lot of dowsers. He had the original cubit measure, and then he had a mathematician create another one for him. For me, I worked with dowsers, and we dowsed in several different cubit measures. And then once we got to the newest one, it just comes, you know, directly through my sister for the new geometries on the planet. So it really has moved so much since Slim was here, and he was creating the tools on the physical. And then we discovered the etheric templates. The etheric aspect of the tools is where the true potency and power is with these tools. So Slim was just simply creating the tensor fields, and our passion lies within creating what goes into the fields. And so that's what we do here at Twisted Sage Studios in South Dakota, is we produce the physical tools, but my sister Brenda and I also do all the energy work to anchor those into these tools. And we are a family-run business. My other sister is also here. There's, out of the 8 employees, we have 5 of us that are family, and the other 3 are close friends. So we do take pride in the integrity of our tools, not only on the physical, but the energetic. So.
Really, tools for consciousness. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that story. And it brings up an interesting question. As we could see how you're working to really repurpose the energy here and work with the new grids that are coming online. And you even mentioned the new geometries that are available on the planet. That's really cool. You can speak to that, but I'd also like you to explain a little bit more about the grid systems, the old matrix at the stadiums and in our public places. This is interesting. Is this why many people don't, I don't know if it's many people, but light workers, for example, really don't like being in crowded places or stadiums, because this is structures that are actually manipulating the energy away from higher consciousness. That's what you're saying here.
Right. You know, and I'll be speaking at this at the dowsing convention, the National Dowsing Convention this year in 2018. it's the grid systems. When I first started dowsing, I found that there's naturally occurring geomagnetic lines, and I found that two of these lines converged on an obelisk, and then they went out in one direction. And that direction I followed to the state capitol in South Dakota, to Pierre. So it was an obelisk on a college campus. And so after mapping out a lot of these geomagnetic lines and finding that they were basically feeding capitals.
Interesting.
And so
interesting. You could see the matrix. You were looking at the matrix.
Right.
So it's like the energy of the people feeding the government, the capital.
And then there was the church grids. So, you know, the college person in me would always see, the sociologist would always see that they put churches on top of sacred sites as a form of control, you know, but I did not realize that it was a form of energetic control, because kind of like the Great Pyramids, where they create a geomancy, a connection between sacred sites through the pyramids, that is what creates our physical reality here. And so it's just other people that come along that know about these, and they start to manipulate that physical reality and that energetic. So like the church grids were basically taking energy from people, as are the capital grids, part of that system of control. The football stadiums, boy, there's a lot of energy that's released there. And there's also the graveyards. Wow. But the beautiful thing is that all these grids have been cleared. And, you know, in those cell phone towers, the newer towers, they're part of that newer, trying to recreate some of that geomancy. And so when we step in, and we step in with our tools and our light, we also teach people how to anchor light. We created what we called the Global Love and Gratitude Grid several years ago, and it's just basically anchoring light into cell phone towers and into any communication and waterways. And when you anchor a light from source through there from the heart space, it changes the energetics. That's why we call it the Global Love and Gratitude Grid, is because it creates a frequency of love and gratitude that goes through the airwaves of those cell towers. Okay. And so then, as long as you're not in fear and telling yourself, yeah, this thing's harmful to me, they're benign. They're not hurting anybody that is unaware of it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, I know we're all going to do that when we see those cell towers. They try to camouflage them with like fake trees and things. Yeah. That's a beautiful way to move with it. Also, one thing that irritates me is the TSA and the raise your hands to go through the screening. And this is the same thing. We can repurpose that energy as well.
Right. And, you know, and part of the process of the universal light activation, and we don't really even mention it in there, is that Merkaba reactivation. Your Merkaba, and we have another website, the crystalmerkaba.com, and we teach people how to utilize their Merkaba field, which is just an electromagnetic field that can house and amplify our intentions. We step into one of those machines, and as long as we're not in belief of a fear with that machine, and we know that our energy field, our light body, our Merkaba, and our heart is going to completely change the energy, then we can walk through there, and everybody behind us, their energy has changed. And so it's just, you know, and you can anchor light into those machines. We truly, truly are very, very powerful beings. Yes. And so, yeah, that Merkaba is a huge thing too. And I know we discussed that on our first interview there too, is working with that Merkaba field, the human light body. And that's just one little part of this whole spectrum that we have to, you know, that we have readily available as tools, as consciousness tools to each and every one of us. It is totally our birthright to be creators.
Yes, and you are connecting us with the energy that, you know, we could concentrate and do this on our own through our heart, but these tools just amplify it and they fortify it. And I know many work with their own, the vortex of our own heart, and this just amplifies that energy, and it assists and it refines the energies of heart wounds and the emotional trauma and the baggage that we may carry. So really beautiful, the work that you're doing here with these energy products. Really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it is an honor and a pleasure to be here doing this work. It truly, truly is. And thank you.
Brian Besco, Twisted Sage Studios. We'll have our listeners check out your special offer link and access any or all of those tools or several of them, and really get busy and really assisting in the flow of beneficial energy on our planet. Tools for consciousness. Thank you. As we say goodbye, any last words of advice?
And just try to be in your heart as much as possible. The more we can move our consciousness from here to here and be within our heart on all the decisions that we make and our daily interactions, the more we create from here versus creating from here, where we can be within fear very easy. So I guess just the last words is try to be in the heart as much as you possibly can.
Beautiful words, especially these days when there's so much designed to take us away. We really have responsibility to control, not control, but to be in tune with our own energy. And your tools really assist us in that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Brian Besco, thank you.
Thank you, Loren. Thank you, everybody.
Page. For more information about Brian Besco's Tensor Rings for Transformation, check out the special offer available on this webpage.